Within each and every role player lives this homeless character who wants nothing more than to quiet the heartbeat of every living thing that stands in his way. Today we celebrate this all too familiar character with...
Well now, looky here. It's the Murder Hobo Show.
Welcome to the Murder Hobo Show, Episode 2. We Got No Class. Recorded August 17th, 2019. I'm one of your hosts, Gary, a.k.a. the Murder Hobo, and I am here with none other than the man, the myth, the legend, Victor Diaz.
Y'all ready for this?
A.k.a. Ezra Harden on most social media sites. How's it going, Victor?
Hey, what's going on, Gary? Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. So glad to be in the hot seat today. That's right. We're here in episode 2, and we're going to be talking about no class. That's going to be an interesting topic. I'm really looking forward to talking about that.
I hope so. I mean, it really piqued my interest when I saw it, looking at that little whatchamacallit there. So that's kind of cool. We'll get into that a little bit later on. This is a podcast about role-playing games now. That's it. Just role-playing games in general. We could talk about whatever you want. You want to talk about Little Lamentations of the Flame Princess? You want to talk about, hey, did you see the kids on pikes? Do you know what I'm talking about? The Lamentations of the Flame Princess. And there's this sort of a deal going around where they have people are like, I guess, complaining because the cover of the Lamentations has kids on pikes, like you know, they're literally speared on pikes, and that you see the bikes in the ground, but the kids are. So apparently that's a thing that people are upset about now. I don't know, but
we're trying. It's because we're trying to get our minds off of Trump. That's why. So
this is a podcast about role playing games where Victor and myself are going to ramble incoherently in a veiled attempt to sound like we know what we're talking about. Sound good?
Yeah, because we don't know how to ramble incoherently.
So, Victor, my man, what have you been doing for the last couple of weeks? You got to be the busiest man on Main Street lately. You got the big work thing going on there. You got any games running, or do you even have time for games lately?
I've been burning the wick at both ends and in the middle. So there's a couple of things happening on my end. Just finished up a big 2-week, 12 hours, 15 days straight kind of thing at work. But in between that and before that, because Gary and I haven't talked in a couple of weeks, or at least haven't put on any shows in a couple of weeks, I had just got out of a con. Crit Hit was a lot of fun. I got to talk to Alan Barr from Tiny D6, Gallant Knight Games. Really fun stuff. Got to play in a playtest for Tiny Cthulhu. I'm really looking forward to seeing that book hit the market. So that was a lot of fun. I've been playing a couple of games like that in the Tiny D6 system and kind of just messing around with that a little bit in the background. That might be something else we can talk about in the near future. If you haven't looked it up, go look at Gallant Knight Games on Twitter, Facebook, or you can look up any of the Tiny Supers game that just hit from Kickstarter. And I'm expecting mine any day now. Subtle hint, Alan. It should be coming in the mail here with some dice and some other stuff. So looking forward to seeing that. I already have my PDF copy that I printed out on my own. I've been using that here at the table, but that's a really cool little system. I think everyone should take a look at. Tiny Supers by Gallant Knight Games. Met with a whole bunch of different writers and developers games at Crit Hit in Phoenix. Really looking forward to doing, and I'm prepping for that now. Later on in the year, in a couple of months here in Tucson, we're going to be doing another convention where I've been asked to do a workshop on bullet journals for GMs. If you guys have never heard about bullet journals and you've never heard about bullet journals GMs, where have you been hiding? Because I've been talking about this for a couple of years now. So we're going to do probably a half day or a full day workshop during that weekend over at RingCon 2019. So make sure you guys head out to Tucson, Arizona. Come see me if you find me. If you're listening to the podcast and you see me at a con, please stop me, even if it's in the middle of a game. I do not mind. It's always nice to talk to the fans. It's always nice to talk to folks who like to listen to me and Gary rattle on about games all day long. So a lot of stuff in the works for that. I've been trying to finish up Bear Wars that is a work in progress. I have a couple of pieces of art. I have a koala. I have a grizzly. There's a couple of others on order at the moment. So that's going to be fun. If you guys haven't checked that out, ICRPG is the system for that world primer that's going to come out hopefully this summer. I've been saying that for a year, so we'll see how that goes. Last but not least, yeah, exactly. Last but not least, I think Chimera is this close to being finished. I'm still waiting on a couple of pieces of art, and most of the layout is done. So that should be a pretty good little science fantasy game that I've put together, again, using ICRPG. But you could probably play it with any OSR or light rule system like Tiny D6 or the Black Hack. Lots of other games like that where it's mostly D20 based. I think the modularness of the system, the magic, the psionics, and the tech and stuff works really well to be able to get that together. Yeah, there's like 101 other things going, but as you can tell, I'm still busy. I'm still writing. I'm still out here playing my games. And yes, we have a bi-weekly game twice a month. We get together with my friends at the town nearby, and I've been playing the games here at the house and a guy locally. You know what? There was a game that I just got invited to, and I didn't know these guys were playing down the road from me. It was for Savage Worlds. It was a cyberpunk game called Interface 2.0. And they had caught me at a really good moment because Interface 03 Kickstarter had just finished, and I'm actually waiting on the PDF like tomorrow for Interface 3.0 using Savage Worlds Adventure Edition. So we're going to give that a try. We've been playing the 2.0 version. I've always liked the cyberpunk stuff and the sci-fi stuff, obviously, big Rifts fan. But I think that's going to be the next big thing that we're going to start soon. Looking forward to that game.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, Interface 0 was a bit of a behind-the-scenes talk, but in the little group of people that I hang out with, I think they... I think Eric and Matt might have backed that as well, because they were talking about it quite a bit there when it came out. No, I didn't throw my money down on the Cyberpunk, but I have too much stuff on the go. And then you know what? I should have done it anyway because I keep throwing my money out on other things. Oh man!
Yeah, tell me about it. It's ridiculous. It's addictive, isn't it?
We'll get into some of the cool stuff when we get into what's new in the ICR or in the. Look at that! See what I just did by default there. We'll get into it. When we get into the what's new in the RPG community section. So yeah, that's cool. So you got any thoughts on the new show format? It's a little bit of freedom to talk about anything and everything that we want instead of just sort of pigeonholing us into riffs and ICRPG.
You know,
so that's kind of cool.
Yeah, definitely. I really like the format. The only reason I think I like it the most is because now I don't have to hold back. I don't have to just talk ICRPG or just talk Savage Rifts or, you know, whatever the topic is for the night. We can literally just let it go. And you and I are both avid gamers, and we've been avid gamers. Not only do we support the communities through Kickstarters, we have blogs, we have videos. You know, of course, we do the podcast for a couple of other games we've done in the past, but we play lots of games, different games, war games, skirmish games, board games, card games, role-playing games, tabletop games, and fusions of everything in between, and video games. So if this isn't a diehard gamers podcast, I don't know what is, right? So I think it'll be great. I think it'll open up a lot of our readers' eyes to the variety of games that are out there, and hopefully it'll spread our wings a little bit, get some more people involved in the show, and maybe show them a few new things.
Hey there, Mr. Suit-wearing guy. Yes, that's me. Don't I know you from someplace before? Yeah, I do know you. What's new with you, man? Well, I suppose I can tell you what's new. Oh, yeah.
What's new in the RPG community? We scoured the Kickstarter, so you guys don't have to, but I would suggest doing it anyway because we only have so much time to talk about certain things. I looked at a couple of different things that had been, they're either sort of lesser known or they are like really well known. And so the first one that I picked that came up, there's only 10 days left as of the recording. So this one's going to be done by the 17th. But this is by Nerdarchy, and when I was looking at it, it's called Out of the Box Encounters for 5th edition. Man, it's 700% funded. And this beast, it looks like a real doozy. These guys over at Nerdarchy are creating an encounters book, which is pretty cool. I don't know if it's like an encounters book, a box set, some kind of adventure chest thing they got going on. I'm not sure what it is, but man, it looks fantastic. So I went in for the 20 Smackers level. It's going to get me, with stretch goals, 55 various encounters for dungeon or wilderness.
Wow.
Now, That's just PDF format, which is kind of sweet. And I think it was originally supposed to be 30, but they're at like 204,000 Canadian dollars right now. These guys,
dude, 153,000 American dollars out of a $20,000 goal. Wow.
Pretty crazy, eh? Like making out like bandits, these guys. So it started off with 30 unique encounters, more with stretch goals, which is kind of the cool part about throwing your money down on Kickstarter. There's going to be new monsters, including new legendary creatures, layers, and regional effects. That should be some interesting stuff going on there. New magic items, Eric Lamoureux's favorite, that are going to be in there, along with new monsters using them.
Yeah,
right?
They have a Fantasy Grounds add-on.
At a certain
D&D
level.
Beyond integration. Yeah.
Isn't
it looks
that
like
cool?
they're making money. The ticker's moving as I speak, so that's pretty cool.
Right. You're going to get map packs for every encounter to put down on your table. And Arknight is doing those flat, clear-through plastic minis that he's created a couple of years back.
I love those. Yeah, I love those.
They're pretty sweet, man. So how can you go wrong? $20 for 55 sort of adventure seeds, which is pretty cool. Now, the only kind of crappy part about this thing is, like, if you start reading through some of the selections, it's not until you get up to like the 115 US level that you're going to get like all of the sort of the physical stuff with the flat plastic minis and all that other stuff. So unless you're willing to throw down for this, I would, because I'm mostly going to be doing online stuff anyways. That's why I'm going for PDF. But man,
Sure.
$115 is pretty steep. You know, that's a lot of coin to be throwing down. But look what you get.
Well, you know what, Gary? If you think about it, though, if you're fairly new to the game, say you've been playing 3 to 5 years, right? And you've got a small little collection, or you've been playing with a few odds and ends at the table, maybe even just some graph paper and some markers, right? But you've got a good game going, or you've had a couple of sessions and a couple of campaigns that you played with a couple of groups, and you really, are feeling the hobby, and you want to get into it, which is great. For $120, you can't even buy, 3 or 4 D&D books and a box of miniatures for $120 out here.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it says the MSRP is 150. I think I've spent probably twice that in the last year on just new RPGs that I've bought into. So if you're someone new to the hobby, or someone that has a little bit of a collection and really wants to make it grow, this would be a really good opportunity, especially as a GM who's running the show, because not only do you get the encounters, right, which is awesome, you get the maps to go with it. So you print them out, or, you get the physical maps that'll go with it. You'll get the Arknight minis, and those are just cool just to begin with. The art is crazy good on those, because they have a couple of pictures out on the Kickstarter site. They even have one of the works in progress pages, the out of the box encounters called Argument. Some pretty neat stuff that looks like it's really simple and easy to use right out of the box. So just kind of perusing the Kickstarter page, I would highly recommend it for beginner GMs or intermediate GMs that are looking to invest a little more for stuff at their table. I think for people who have a big collection and kind of do a lot of stuff online, or maybe don't play at the table that often, this might not be the best buy. You may want to go in for $20 just to get the encounters and maybe print your own out as you need them, like you're probably going to do, Gary, or, use at the table, at the virtual tabletop. But if I was like my sons are around 18, 19, 20 years old, and they've been playing games for a little while. And if they want to go and make their own table and run with their games, they can always borrow dad's stuff, but eventually they're going to have to get their own. I don't know, for $115 American, that's not a bad deal. What kind of bargain that is.
Yeah, that's kind of the coolest part about this Kickstarter in particular, is that each one of these 55 encounters is actually going to have a map that you can use for it, with the monsters, like the minis for it. And so you can actually sort of like build, you're going to get 55 sort of set scenes kind of a thing for the $115. So not that it's a good deal, I would say, but that is still quite a big chunk of change to be thrown down on something, but I think worth it in the end. You're getting the minis and stuff out of the deal, and 55 complete adventures that you could just sort of throw down, piece together, and set the scene, and actually have some physical.
That's more than enough for a campaign. I mean, you figure if you do 3 encounters a night, right, and you do 20 encounters, that's 60 encounters total. You could easily reuse the monsters in the same room because the characters go back, or you can put a couple of different maps together that weren't together before. Usually the table's not going to complain that you're reusing art because if it looks as good as it does on the screen, man, the printed stuff is going to look awesome. And then with Arknight minis on top of it, it's a win-win.
Yeah, I really like how they threw the stretch goals together too. It's like a treasure map, and it says the adventure begins, and it's like, okay, funded 30 encounters. That's what you get when it hits funded, right? The next one's 35 total encounters, then 40, and then you get a little bit more art, 45 encounters. But as you keep going through, then it says down to level 2. So then there's another one, and so that's where the Fantasy Ground add-on comes on. The D&D Beyond integration is in there as well, which is pretty cool. They haven't, they've unlocked that as well. Now there's a Nerdarchy dice add-on that's going to be coming along with this one too. And by the looks of it, they've hit an encounters deck. Now I'm not quite sure what this is, but yeah, they got because this wasn't here last night when I was checking it out. So there's going to be an encounters deck and a fortunes deck, and then looks like an adventure written by somebody and whatever the Great Convergence is. And they might in the next 10 days bloody well hit all of these stretch goals. So looks good.
Most of the time, the way these things go is you get a really high buy-in and lots of people in the first couple of days, and then it kind of lulls, 30-day window. And then the last 2 or 3 days, people are like, oh my God, I got to get on this before this runs out, because they don't want to pay full price, or they're just jumping in with the rest of the 1,000 people that hear about it. But yeah, this is pretty good.
See, now that I've read this, I want to click on the 115 and get it all. So yeah, that's the out-of-the-box encounters for 5th edition. I think this one's going to be a real zinger. This is the kind of Kickstarter that you want to get behind. One of them that sort of takes off, and you get all the incredible amount of stretch goals and stuff out of. So yeah, out of the box encounters for 5th edition, man. $20 for a PDF will get you 55 encounters. How can you go wrong?
Yeah, done by the guys over at Nerdarchy. So for nerds by nerds. They have a pretty good program, pretty good little racket going on over there. So support them if you like them, and if you're looking to get a little deeper into 5e or get some D&D stuff, I agree with you. I think it'll be even for $20, it's a pretty good Kickstarter. You get quite a bit for your money.
Damn Skippy. What else we got?
All right, so the next one we're going to go to, talking about Kickstarters. There's another one that is a grim dark fantasy. It is a tabletop role-playing game, and it is called Grim Hollow. Now, Grim Hollow is currently at, I believe this is Australian, so they're $26,473 pledged out of $43,000 Australian. So they're about 50% of their goal, but I think they just started, because it says it has 395 backers with only 30 days to go. So it looks like they're off to a pretty good start at 50%. So what Grim Hollow is, it's a grimdark fantasy tabletop role-playing game set 5th edition. It's set in a dark godless world called Etharis. And the civilization has long forgotten hope and clings to a desperate survival. So almost a horror survival game, it sounds like, by the grimdark fantasy description that they're talking about there. So you're going to get Grim Hollow, the campaign guide. That's going to be like a 200-page adventure module that's going to be set in the world of Etharis. And you get to create your own grimdark setting using those rules. It gives you everything from world lore to expanded game mechanics. The campaign guide is designed specifically to shift the theme of a campaign from high heroic fantasy to something a little darker. And I think that's kind of cool. There's a couple of games out there that are not 5th edition, but definitely fantasy D&D that allow you to do that. But this Grim Hollow is going to be totally 5th edition, dark fantasy characters and world that's going to really tie together. So looking forward to that. Some of the stuff that they talk about in the Kickstarter is the lore of Etharis and a detailed account of the bleak and dangerous world, from locations to the pantheon, notable factions, folktales, and of course, there's always more added on to that. There's a dedicated section for the GameMaster that gives you tools to create a grimdark campaign in Etharis, as well as your own setting, and it includes some variant rules. And that's where I always like to delve into, see what everyone else is thinking and how they can make the game a little bit better, and in this case, a little bit darker. It says, quote, a completely overhauled character background system, accompanied by mechanics to add depth and variation to character creation. That could be an interesting conversation depending on the direction they went with. It could be, right? It could be very modular, and it could be no classes, and something we're going to talk about later on regarding the no class and multi-class question. This might be something you can use to plug in your system if you don't like the way the character system is currently built into D&D, but you never know. Hundreds of people have tried to do it in the past, and it'd be interesting to see what this one's going to do. To go on and talk a little bit more, there's there's a section called Transformations. There's new game mechanics to facilitate players becoming vampires and liches. Now, that's an interesting concept. to be able to get the players to do that.
Right? How'd you like to play a lich? That would actually be pretty cool.
Yeah, and it also, you have to worry about your phylactery and the immortal, the immortal abilities that come with it. And the same thing with vampires, allergic to garlic and silver and, all that other stuff that goes with it. It could be a really interesting plot twist or player twist if played correctly.
Right.
I'd be interested to see what the game mechanics are involved in that. A little more on that hopefully will show up as we go through the description.
You know what would really suck? If you were playing a lich because you're undead and your stuff starts to fall apart, and what if you're like walking down the street and your phylactery fell off, landed on the ground, and everybody saw it?
Pardon me, miss, while I pick up my phylactery.
Oh,
Moving on, we're going to talk a little bit about Advanced Armory. Advanced Armory has a string of magic items, your favorite and mine, and non-magic items to gear up against the darkness. Of course, there's always new character feats in every new 5e book that's ever been written, because I guess we can't have enough of them. It says Itharis is home to all manner of dark fantasy themes reminiscent of Gothic horror. So I guess they want to kind of bring a little bit of Ravenloft into 5e here. This one wants to do horror, gritty realism, and a twist of Grimm's fairy tales. So it should be an interesting little combination here. Some story hooks.
Looks good,
some gritty locations. I can definitely say that the art is well up to the 5e standards. Really, really good stuff.
The only thing that I'm worried about is this Ghostfire Gaming guys this is their first created Kickstarter. That kind of sets me off a little bit, and it's $25 just for the PDF. Now you are getting a full campaign out of the deal, and it does have that Ravenloft feel. But if you just take a step back and take a look at the Kickstarter page, Victor, it is clean. The art is nice. This Kickstarter page is well put together. Like they dropped a couple of dollar bills on this, man, with the artwork and the setup of this Kickstarter page alone. So if they're looking at going that far, if the Kickstarter page is anything to judge the material that they're able to put out, it might be well worth it just to throw down, maybe even for the PDF for $25.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. Usually you can kind of gauge Kickstarters by how well they're put together, right? How well the art works, where the whole layout of the Kickstarter is. On the previous Kickstarter that we were just talking about, called Out of the Box Encounters, you will see that there was a couple of screenshots of examples of pages in the book showing the layout, the background, the art, some of the descriptions, and giving you samples of the writing. And that is a really good testament that you have editors and writers that have paid good money for not only the artists, right, but for layout editors and all the publishers and the guys who do all the work behind in the background to be able to make the Kickstarter really, really shine. And that shows that you're going to get a quality product. Is this kind of on the expensive side? You know what? I would want to say, yeah, I tend to agree with you. With that said, I will caveat that with this. If the game art in the book is as good as it is on the Kickstarter page, I think that's where all their money is going. Granted, a hardback book is not cheap, especially at the page count of 200 plus pages of material. I don't know, Gary, you and I print our own stuff in the United States, and we know how inexpensive that can be. But if you're charging me, what, $50, $60 for a hardback 200-page book, to me, that's a little overpriced. I understand most major publishers like Wizards of the Coast, Pathfinder, and whatnot are selling rule books at $60. But that's the Lamborghini and the high-end Cadillac, BMWs of the gaming system. You get what you pay for, right? There are thousands of hours of writing, let alone editing and playtesting involved in that. I don't think someone who's new to the game, the Kickstarter game, and writing, writing the games like that, is going to give you that level of quality of work to be charging you the same. I'm not saying they're not worth it, because I don't know. Now, I need to eat a little crow here. A little bit further down the Kickstarter page, you'll see to the playtesting area, they do have examples of the layout. There's a 2-page layout screenshot of the world of Itharis. And the artwork and the layout look absolutely stunning. Yeah, remind me of some Wizards of the Coast stuff for sure.
Yeah, it's very 5e, which to me seems a touch shady, because this is them mimicking, not Do you know what I mean? Like I'm a little worried about that. So
right, yeah, exactly. For the price that you're getting, you'd think that you would get something that's a little more original, a little less, a little less Xerox machine, a little less copy, right? Because they're mimicking what 5e is putting out, what you can get at D&D Beyond. So we understand the tools and how easy it is to be able to do that. Granted, the artwork looks original. It doesn't look like it's reused or, they're not picking up stuff, but it's full, 3-color, real nice. I think it'll show up real nice in the book. But for the price you're asking for, yeah, I'm a little leery myself.
Yeah, it's. I'm mostly weary that it's first created. This, this is the kind of thing that you do when you're a little tried and true. But it does look fantastic. It has like that full on sort of sidestepped Ravenloft feel to it. And when I saw how well this page was put together, I was like, it's going to be hit or miss, but it looks really good. So that's the Grim Hollow campaign guide for 5th edition. Did you see this one, Victor? This little sniglet that I found, this little sneaky little piggy. Not really game related, but it is pirates, and I love my pirates. This one is called The Return of Ladybeard, and I just threw it in here because I had a good chuckle. This is an adult-oriented pirate adventure comic, and if you just scroll through it and start going down near the bottom, it is like you got your like sexy pirate lady sitting on a chest, and then if you go down,
ladies and gentlemen, as you know, Gary's fondness of boobs is the reason why he's into this comic. The artwork is good. I really like the style. The art is by Luisa Russo. Really nice touch. I like the whole sketchiness and the whole comic book style of it all. The pictures aren't bad either.
Yeah, right.
So,
look at all those little black bars that cover up the naughty bits. In that one panel, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. There's 10, 11, 12 little naughty bit covers in that one. That's like a lot of naughty bits in that one page.
Yeah, how many times can he say naughty bit?
Hey?
Yeah, it gets better and better, right? You know what? I'm looking at the pledge level of $10. That's the first lowest level you can get. It's the digital bundle. You'll get digital copies of the Lady Redbeard number 1 and 2, and those are like compilations. Those are like annuals, right? That's 80 pages of comics and extras. So that looks like a pretty good deal. $6,800 of a $6,000 goal, and they've still got 27 days to go. So it looks like they hit their goal, and they're just waiting for some more people to pile on. So if you're into pirates and you're into comics, and of course naughty bits, you and Murder Hobo himself will be joining on this this particular one. It's pretty good. I like it.
Now, look, if you go down to like the 3rd or 4th comic panel there, and that girl, she's turning into like a spider. That I think that's a pretty slick little deal. But half naked pirate chicks, man. The Return of Lady Redbeard. Where do you think her Redbeard is? Huh?
No comment.
All right, so moving on. This one showed up on Lamoureux. My buddy Eric Lamoureux from the Wild Eye podcast posted this today, and I saw it today, and I was looking at it last night, and I'm like, yeah. So I think we should take a quick peek at this one here, and I kind of threw this in last minute. This is called Immersive D&D Adventure Boxes. It's got 28 days to go. They're looking for 25,000 Canadian. These are a couple guys from Toronto, Canada. Now, I think they've already been creating adventure boxes. And although this one does look cool, I find that the rewards for this are just a little weird. And here's why. So for 7 Canadian, you're going to get the Shattered Shield module, which is this PDF download. And you're going to get the Shattered Shield sound set, which is a sound set for Sirenscape. Then you go from 7 to 27, you're going to get a mug, like a wooden mug. $40 is going to get you a scented candle, the wooden mug, the sound set, and you're still just getting a $5 coupon voucher. It's not until you start throwing in like 135 Canadian that you're actually getting the box. And at that point, I'm pulling the pin, man. I'm out. Although it does look cool, this box that they wrap everything up in actually gets cut apart and unfolded into a DM screen with a really interesting and innovative way to put character initiatives or player initiatives on the top along with the PCs. that's pretty neat. I like that you've got them. You just drop them in the little slot. And in the center, it has a dice rolling tray, which is pretty cool. And this gives you this candle, this mug. It gives, I don't know if you get the dice, but I do see dice there. And an adventure and some 3D sort of paper terrain and a little bit of a map and stuff like that. But man, for $130, you've priced me out of my market for whatever it is that you're getting out of this stuff. Like,
yeah, and it looks like the box is just a like a cardboard box that's been folded and machine folded or machined. Period. It might have like a magnet enclosure or something. It does have some information on the inside of the box. The outside of the box looks nice, but it's not a wooden box. It's not a metal, clipped or edges or gilded, or it's not anything in particular. It's just literally a cardboard box that's been folded up. It has some nice print, 3 colors, shiny, looks like glossy or maybe matte on the inside and outside. And the built-in dice tower folded into the boxes is a really neat idea. But yeah, for $130, you're giving me a DM screen box made of cardboard.
Yeah. The module,
and then
couple minis, paper craft terrain curated for the module. That's kind of cool, but man, still mystery item for players at your table. There's bonus printed NPC stat cards, the hobby paint packs. You get some paints, the candle, the mug, and the sound set, and a membership to the realm. And I'm not sure what that actually means. But man, $130 for is that like going to be an every month kind of a thing? I didn't quite look into it that much. Although it's super cool looking, there is man, that's stiff.
This is you know what? You look at this, and I'm looking at add-ons and stuff, and so like a blazing hearth candle is going to be $27 Canadian added on, 18 euros as an add-on. Shield mugs, a set of 4 mugs for $40 American, 53 Canadian. Right, a Wayfarer's pouch. It's a little like 3x5 pouch with coins, rations, a mini map of Glynn, a candle, flint and steel. So these are like props. These are like real world touchy-feely kind of things. You can add that on for 50 American. There's an Order of the Raven expansion. It looks like it's giving you a candle, some tokens.
See what I mean? Like, but it doesn't really seem like you're going to get anything unless you throw down like $130. And then really, what are you getting? A wooden box and a module?
These are the prices that I was telling you of the add-ons each.
Yeah.
So for 4 mugs, that's another 35 euros, $40 I got to throw in. For the Wayfarer's pouch, there's an additional $50 I got to put in. Now, granted, they do have some cool stuff like the 217 euro Dungeoneers pack. It has a backpack, a crowbar, a hammer, pythons, torches, rations, a water skin, 50 feet of hempen rope strapped to the side of it. And I don't know if that's like the real thing, or is that a kit, or is that cardboard, or what is that?
It's got to be the real thing, man. What are you going to do with that?
Okay, so let's back the train up a little bit and let's talk about that. I think if you're a LARPer or you have a really immersive role-playing table, where guys like to have, like a toy sword or even a real one, a helmet, you're kind of playing the game a little bit more. I think if you're really into that and you like to have tactile things at the table, I think this will be great. The only problem I have with that is I think the newness and the funness of that will disappear quickly. It'll be fun for the first couple of games, but then you're like, okay, it's the same backpack, the same rope. There's a reason why we have paper representations of those things at the table, because there's no reason to bring it out right now. Now, don't get me wrong. If you're into live action role-playing game, a lot of this stuff could be really useful. The belt pouch could hold your money. The backpack could hold your equipment and your tools, your dice, your books, your rule books, your games, that kind of stuff. An explorer's pack, might have some real rope. These props might have real value for you if you're into live action role-playing. Or even just kind of, want to fit the part when you're at the table. But I've done that in the past, long time ago, and it loses its luster very quickly.
Nerd.
Totally.
I'm telling you, buddy, you show up to my house with your explorer's pack on your back, and you come into my place, and we're in my basement.
Chainmail with the Viking helmet.
Right, and we're playing, and I explain to you that you have traversed into a dark dungeon, and you reach into your backpack and fire up one of those torches, I guarantee you I'm going to beat you to death with the other two that aren't lit. Right? I'll tie you up with your rope and I will baton you somewhere outside. And
I'm going to douse you with the ale in my cup. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah, I'm going to take a hard pass on this one. Immersive D&D adventures. So, moving along, let's talk a little bit about the new Savage Rifts, because we can. Arcane and Mysticism book that's out now. I haven't even had a chance to this is like a Twinkie, like a special like like one of those commemorative Twinkies, maybe a seasonal or a festive Twinkie that's just come out, and I'm saving it for like a special day. I haven't even actually cracked the pages open of this bad boy because I started reading the GM's guide all over again. For Savage Rifts. So, but I know you've at least looked inside the book. What do you think? How is it? Is it good?
Holy mackerel, mother of God! This thing is packed deep. We've got 6 iconic frameworks. 6 DBs and mutants. More backgrounds and edges and magic and psionics, and you can throw a stick at. We're looking at 100 pages of Savage Rift stuff that is brand new. It has never been printed. It's never been written in previous Savage Rifts books. This book alone was well worth it for the Kickstarter. If you're going to play Savage Rifts, if you want to play Savage Rifts, hell, even if you're looking for a Savage Rifts book to read on the weekends or on the toilet, this is going to be the one. Lots and lots of good stuff. The Arcane Gazetteer is in it. It talks about the Spirit West, the Magic Zone, and what's beyond. There's a GameMaster handbook section. It talks about a mission profile table. You'll like that one, Gary. Just the Spirit West alone. Okay, granted, for those of you who don't know, I live in Arizona, and Arizona in Savage Rifts is known as Arsno, and it goes into a lot of detail about Arsno, life in Arsno, the Arsno territory, the Native American preserves, places of interest in and around that area, the Trith Sol, the savage tale called Worm Food. Oh, just so awesome. I hate those freaking worm people. Anyways, if you're looking for something new, man, take a look at this book. It's got, the first thing that they come across, just to give you an example, folks who like to play Savage Rifts always tell me, man, what a great mechanic the juicer was. The Blaze of Glory and that whole nonsense. Well, guess what, ladies and gentlemen? The first iconic framework in the book on page 9, Dragon Juicer. Bam. That's all you got to say. Bam, like Dragon Juicer. Seriously, there is a dude that is totally yoked wearing a juicer harness, right? With all the veins popping out and big muscles. And he's covered in spikes and dragon skin armor on his boots and forearms and shoulders. And he's got a purple mohawk carrying what looks like a light anti-tank weapon.
Nice.
What more can you say? Oh, yeah, dude, it's just awesome. And that's how they start out. Big bang right out front, right? They start talking about the Dragon Juicer. They go into Elemental Fusionist. The next one, the Zapper. Oh, one of my favorites. A Zapper, if you don't know what that is, it's like a burster, a pyrokinetic, but this one is like an electrokinesis. He can control electricity. Put him on a ley line, dude, goes crazy. They have some Mars packages in there, like one of my favorites, the Battle Magus. They're one of the 3 brotherhoods of the Magi from Dewormer, the magical city. And Battle Magi are literally mages that specialize in fighting everything from lightning bolts and fireballs to magical weapons and specialized armor. They're just really, really cool and really, really dangerous if you're on the wrong end of it. They have a High Magus, a combat mage, and a Battle Magus, and there's a Lord Magus, and that's way up there. You're talking crazy dice with magic. The dude's had as a spell casting, an occult, and an arcane background of D8 with 15 power points to start, 5 powers using the Leyline Walkers list. It just goes on. It just gets crazy from there.
Did you have a chance to check out the plot point campaign that comes with this one? Have you read any of the adventures for that?
You know what? I've been holding off reading through that. I've been too busy looking at all the stuff in between. All the gear. All the gear. Oh, yeah, sure. So there's some great gear. Of course, I'm a power armor fanatic. I love that one. There's a really great Sandstorm hovercraft vehicle that's in there. There's this one armor called the Jackrabbit. It's really cool because the helmet has like these two blades that are kind of tall and it looks like the ears of a jackrabbit pointed back. Again, I'm from Arizona, so jackrabbits are kind of around here. But lots of fun stuff. There's everything from like a giant scorpion-like vehicle to an ice drake, which is like imagine a dragon made of ice. It's just crazy. It's an automaton. It's a magical automaton called an ice drake automaton. It's made by the DeWalmer military. It's created out of an Air Force elemental, and they make it to look like a blue and white dragon with a saddle in the middle. You just ride along and shoot spells out of everywhere, and it flies and ice breath and cold and ice trappings all over the place. I mean, for heaven's sakes, its claws and tails are strength plus 3d6 mega damage with an AP of 4. That's just its claws and tails. Yeah. The frost blast is mega damage 2d10. Oh, and you get raise instead of bonus damage on a raise. The target becomes distracted. That's
insane. You're way too excited for this book. On a scale of how many dragon juicers out of 10 do you give it?
Oh wow! I'm only gonna give it a 9. I want to say I almost gave it a 10. The only reason I haven't given it a 9 yet, or a 10 yet, excuse me, I haven't seen the other books yet. Wait till those come out. Yeah, because I think the whole package is going to be really, really cool. I mean, they're giving us pretty much everything that we wanted, right? More weapons, more power armors, more vehicles, more creatures. There's a gazetteer. They talk about Arsno, and I think they did that just for me. Thank you, Sean, and Sean. The Spirit West, all that stuff, because, I mean, live in Arizona, Native Americans, that kind of thing. So always a lot of fun. I'm just looking through the book as we go through here, and I don't think I've gotten past like page 80, but there's 100 pages of nothing but gooey goodness.
Put it down, mister. This is not a deep dive on arcane and mysticism.
Back away from the book. Back away. If there's something RPG related that you want us to look at, it can be ICRPG, it can be Savage Rifts, it could be D&D, it could be, or if there's another game that you want to know more about that we want to give it a swing or maybe dig into, give us a shout out, send us an email. We'll be more than happy to take a look at that for you.
Yes, so nice. All right, so we're going to shoot right over and get into the main topic, which is classes in RPG. Changed my mind. I'm going to be Treven Stowell, I think is that guy's name, whatever that jackass is. Steven Crowder? I can't remember.
So go ahead, Gary, because this was your idea, and I want pitch it from your point of view, and then I'll give you mine, and we can talk about that a little bit, because I think I think our points of view differ a little bit on this, but maybe not. I've been wrong.
So I've been playing D&D now for, man, I don't even know how long. I don't even want to admit how old I am, but when you're playing it, everything is class-based, and until you get out of playing a class-based game, you don't sort of realize how structured you are inside of the game. And I came across this the other day, and it's called Everyone Loves Multiclassing by, this is belloflostsouls.net. And as I was looking at it, I'm like, top multi-class by class, all players unlock. So this has something to do with, they've aggregated this information from D&D Beyond. And what it is it's a list of all of the classes and what percent of those people that have sort of, thrown their information on D&D Beyond have multi-classed their class. And it's just, I'm shocked and I'm taken aback by it all. So if you're playing the Barbarian class, for example, it says that 49% of the Barbarians end up getting multi-classed. And then it breaks it down into what classes: Fighter, Rogue, and Monk. So Fighter being 14%, the Rogue at 7%, and Monk at 6%. So you've already switched your Barbarian from a straight Barbarian into these other classes. And then it sort of carries on between all of them. And you take a look at the Cleric. The Cleric is 95% multi-classed with Fighter, Rogue, and Wizard. So why I wanted to bring this up and why I found it interesting is because if you're going to have a class in a game and everybody multi-classes, why not just get rid of the class structure? don't you think we might be there with D&D? Like, don't you think classes are a thing of the past, especially when you're coming from games like we like to play, like Savage Worlds and ICRPG, where although ICRPG might have, people could say it has classes, you're still free to pick. They're just guidelines for what you can take, right? So super interesting to see that. Warlock, 91% multiclass. Sorcerer, 90% multiclass. The Rogue, 50% multiclass. It's like, wow, every one of these things, the lowest one is 46%, the Fighter. It's 46% multiclass. That's the lowest one, according to their stats.
And that's only because I think a fighter is mostly a fighter, right? I mean, everyone is a fighter to some point, but when you play a fighter, only 46% of that class is multi-class. That means at least half the class is dedicated to just a fighter. And most of the time you're going to play, at least 50% of the time you're going to use a lot of the fighter abilities. Whereas like a cleric, 95% of the class is multi-classed. You pick up 17% of the fighter feats and abilities, 12% of the rogues of abilities, and 9% of the wizard's abilities. And everything else is just gets thrown in, to a big pot that's called the cleric. And I think 95% of the people get create a multi-class cleric, fighter, druid, monk, or whatever that case can be. Yeah, I tend to agree with your statement when it comes to other games like ICRPG or Savage Worlds. I believe those two game systems deal more in archetypes and not classes. Because in my opinion, most of the games that I'm playing today, everybody's class is a hero. What flavor of hero you want to bring is completely up to the archetype that you choose. Now, granted, it may be a case of semantics, right? Archetype, class, whatever you want to categorize your character or your hero as, it really doesn't make a difference. But most of the folks who start to play outside of D&D and start to use classless systems have found that the Lego block of plug and play to create your own character unique to you is much more flexible and much more freeing than it is to play in a class-based system. I'm not knocking the class-based system by saying that. I agree with the class-based system. I understand how it works in Pathfinder, in D&D, and various other games that utilize a class-based system. But I think a class-based system is just simply another way to get you to level up and buy another book to play another game, to level up, to buy another book, to play another game. And after about 10 games of that or so, you start to realize, or you either get bored or you realize there's other things out there, right? And then you find other games that are not as restrictive or not as class-based. Or you go the opposite end and you become one of those really deep thinking players that is multi-classing from level 1. From level 0, you're already playing a barbarian monk and you're like, wait a minute, I want to be able to throw a magic missile spell. How can I do that? I'm going to talk to the GM. Dude, you're level 2. I know. How do I do that? And so they start figuring out ways to in-game multi-class without multi-classing, quote unquote, and they're able to get a barbarian monk that can cast magic missiles because of a wish spell. And that's all well and fine and dandy if that's the kind of game that you want to play. You definitely don't want to talk balance. You definitely don't want to talk about standards when you're playing a multi-class game where everybody at the table is a multi-class character, because that just, man, I don't even want to start to think about the math on that.
I just find it so crazy. Like, so the whole point of class structure is so that you get that themed character, right? Like, your character's a cleric. He's the healing guy that does the buffs, and he casts the healing spells, and he prays to the bejesus and all that stuff, right? So you're trying to get that flavor mixed into it. But if 95% of the class is multi-class, it just sort of screams at me, okay, D&D, if your player base is mostly multi-classing, it's time to change. But at the same time, I feel like D&D can't. Like, when 4th edition rolled around and they did that big friggin' whim bam schmachemy, you know what I mean? And people revolted. They changed it too much and people revolted against it. And from what I've heard, people that get into 4th edition and learn the system and play the system, they actually really like it. And they say it's got a lot of neat features to it. And so I feel like, here we are 40, 50 years into having D&D, Dungeons and Dragons, and And I feel like as a system, Dungeons and Dragons has really sort of forced itself into being what it is, and it's not being allowed to blossom.
Yeah.
For example,
it's still a 100-pound gorilla, right?
Right, and it's
yeah.
You look at Pathfinder. I don't from what I've heard. I haven't read the new Pathfinder. I'm not interested because I'm pulling personally away from crunchy systems. I find that mechanics have a tendency to get into the way of a good story. But from my understanding, I think Pathfinder steered away from the attrition-based system and has gone with the wounds like Savage Worlds. So it's kind of cool to see a major player switching from like a huge mechanic to a different mechanic, but I don't think that Dungeons and Dragons can do that. I think that people are into D&D that love the game and the way that it sits with its classes and stuff like that are sort of forcing D&D to stay in a class system. Maybe they like the level progressions and those kinds of things, but judging by this, it seems like everybody wants to multiclass, and if you've got this many people multiclassing, like a minimum 46%, why not figure out a way, or are their hands tied? Because I'm saying, let's get out of the classes and let's just say, these are archetypes or these are ideas on, and here's a bunch of skills that you can have that you can teach people, and you can just pick those skills and apply them to your character like other systems do. And let's see where we can take D&D that way, because man, as it stands right now, like it's a very rigid system if you play inside the rules of Dungeons and Dragons. And the one thing that I find is like once you hit level 3, you've got sort of 3 branches that you can go if you stick with sort of generic Dungeons and Dragons. And so what are you looking at? You're looking at 12 times sort of 3 branches that you can break off in. And you're looking at 36 basic characters inside the player's handbook that you can play. That's not a really big variety of things.
Yeah, I've known a GM that I've played his games. He was one of the first GMs that ever, because I GM'd games from the very beginning. I bought the red box, I brought the rule books, I bought the Advanced Dungeons and Dragons rule book, and I brought it to the table to all my friends, and they were like, cool, let's play it, you run it, because I was the only one willing to read through the rule book. Granted, we were 10, right? So I was the one that could read the best. I was the smartest kid at the table, like they said, so I was running most of the games. And the first GM that ran games for me where I was a player, thank you a lot, Johnny, by the way, but he doesn't allow multiclassing. He still to this day plays 2nd edition. You cannot multiclass. If you're a mage, you're a mage. You're a mage forever. That's the life path you've chosen. That's where you're going to go. That's how he's going to work it. For him, it works, right?
Yeah,
I think if it's a hardcore rule to go by, but dude's been playing since the very beginning, and he's the one who I'm going to quote in my next statement. If you change D&D from class to classless, it's no longer D&D, right?
No? Well played, man. Well played.
We say this a lot, and I heard that from him many years ago, and I didn't understand it. And I'm talking like 3 decades ago, and I didn't get it. Now, I mean, not just recently, but after a while, I got it. I understood it. If you look at things like you and I talk on a lot of forums, on a lot of different places. Bella Lost Souls, I've been reading it since the beginning. It's a great war game and RPG place for me to go stare at miniatures that are just beyond my reach or my capacity. But they have a really good point. You and I talk a lot about stuff on blogs, on different areas with different people. I mean, hell, we have a couple of podcasts, right, that we've been talking about for 60 some plus odd episodes now. And one of the things that we always preach, or we're always harping on other people at, is that if you're playing game X, and it could be Tiny D6, it could be Savage Worlds, whatever, the first thing we tell them is, this is not D&D. Don't compare it to D&D. It's not a level progression system. It's not a class system. There's not multi-classing. There are no feats. There are no magic items or magic items. This is not D&D. Don't compare it. Because when GMs start comparing the two systems and try forcing D&D rules into ICRPG or vice versa, they have a real hard time understanding the why they should be doing it and why they should not be doing it. And this is where I come back to my GM friend Johnny, who told me if you change D&D to a classless system, it's no longer D&D.
Very, very interesting. And here's my rebuttal to that.
Okay.
I think after 40 years, we have come out with gaming theory that is way better than things we had 40 years ago when D&D
Agreed.
was D&D.
Agreed.
And we just might be at the point where I think D&D might actually become detrimental to players the same way that watching Critical Role has been detrimental. So people say, I'm not one of those people. But you know how they say, like, if you watch Critical Role and then you go, everybody wants to go play D&D because they see these guys doing it. You sit down at the table and it's
not that good.
It's not that good. It's not that thing, right? And I'm thinking that's why people, maybe D&D is now sort of breaking people with its old rules and its old style, because like I say, I don't think that D&D is allowed to change because the diehard fans don't want it to. But you're dealing with 40-year-old frickin' rules that there's mechanics that are out now that are just way better. And
I agree with you. I agree with
let's
your
pull the pin.
frame of mind.
Let's drop a bomb in this bad boy
and be done with it. You think so? If my understanding is correct, your theory is we have come to an apex in the D20 system base that Dungeons and Dragons has been built upon for the last 40 some odd years. And we should start to see pivotal changes to a more modern system, despite the fact that 5e is the most modern system against something that has been played for more than a couple decades.
Mm-hmm.
That's my understanding of what you think, right?
Yes, because 5e is being that it is the most up to date and it is sort of the easiest. They've streamlined everything. You know, back in first and second edition, sometimes you got to roll over, sometimes you got to roll under, and then you hit fifth edition and everything is the higher the better. Like stuff like that is streamlined. They threw in things that are easy to just rule on the spot, like DC. You just make it up. You know, what's the difficulty challenge for picking this lock? You can sort of say, right?
So you don't think those changes that you just laid out, you know, lack of saving throws, armor classes now hit the number or over. It's no longer under or over. You know, it's no longer under. It's not THACO. It's, you know, the target number is 12 or higher. They got rid of saving throws. Hit points, hit dice are very rarely used now. Feats, that was never in the system before. And so if you look at the comparisons from, say, second edition, which was the largest edition written physically, because there's hundreds of books for that system, versus fifth edition, which is, there are very few books written for the system. And in my opinion, fifth edition is the best and most refined version of the oldest role-playing game on the planet.
Yes.
Don't you think that answers your own question?
No, it can be better. They can get rid of some of the mechanics that are clunky, that slow the game down and speed it up. And
okay, no, wait. Let's back that up a little bit. So they can get rid of some mechanics. Why can't they write the game with all those mechanics included? And just, if you read through the GM's manual a couple of times on the back end of that, you'll see all of this is optional. You don't have to use any of it. Just use the ones you like. Use the rules that make your game, right? Because that's what it's always been about. D&D is always about using the rules, making up the rules, and writing whatever rules that aren't in the book. Make them up as you go at the table and just keep using them as house rules. It's always been that way ever since I've played the game from 1982 on. It's always been about making up the rules.
You try and tell that to some of the nerds that I play with at Nerd Haven. You do not break the rules, man. The rules are the rules. D&D has more lawyers in it than most games that I've ever played before. You know what I'm saying?
I agree with you. I agree with you. Being the oldest role-playing game and the first role-playing game has its advantages and its disadvantages. Some folks who don't want to play outside the mold, and some folks who only use the D20 and they're playing their own game and they're calling it D&D and it doesn't resemble the original game at all, even the latest rules. So there's lots of variations in between, right? But if you take a look at it from the grand scheme of things, the game has changed a lot since the beginning. Go play the original brown box, you know, the original rule set with THACO built in and all the holes and all the crazy math that's in there, hit dice and that kind of stuff. And then play each edition as you go and note the changes and note the progression. There are some modern rules, advantage and disadvantage, for example. It's a popular rule that was invented for the 5th edition system, I think. And a lot of the stuff that they learned in 4th edition and some of the classes and changes and multiclassing and things, some of that, you know, bled into 5th edition. No pun intended.
Yeah, I'm sure there was a lot of bloodletting from 4th edition. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They learned how to take a beating.
In 4th edition, there was a mechanic called bloody. When a creature hit 50% of its hit points, it was noted that it was now bloodied, meaning that it was bleeding and wounded, and it's closer to death than it is to, winning. And that's kind of what I meant by it being, bloodied, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
But I think 5th edition is a good. I've got to counter your argument. I've got to disagree with you now that I've contemplated a little bit, and I understand your position a little more. I think 5th edition is a good, not a great, not perfect by any means. No RPG is. I think 5th edition D&D is a good representation of a modern version of what the intent of the original, writers were. Gygax, all those guys, Arneson, that wrote D&D. I think 5th edition is a good modern interpretation of what the intent was in terms of system. Now, is it perfect? No, but I don't agree with that. It is not perfect. Is it good? Yeah, it's good. It's got more time, energy, play testing, and dollars thrown at it than any other role-playing game in the world, period. No one can argue that. Not even Hasbro has as much playtime. Monopoly doesn't have as many hours in it as D&D does. Scrabble, checkers. Well, maybe checkers because it's ancient, but right in the modern age, in the last 50 years, there is no other tabletop game, period, that has as many hours played into it as Dungeons and Dragons does. And if that is not, if you figure that out in miles, man, you should have changed the transmission and the engine a long time ago. Just because it's got 1 million miles on it and it's still running strong, I don't see anything wrong with it. I'm not saying it's perfect. I'm not saying it drives well. It gives good gas mileage, but it's definitely a comfortable ride. And I can't knock the system because look how many players it's brought into a world that didn't even understand what Savage Worlds was, or Rifts, or Shadowrun, or all these other great games. Many people, it's a gateway drug, right? It's a gateway drug to get into role-playing games. And without Dungeons and Dragons, there would be no industry. There would be no, there might be an industry. Somebody I'm sure would have come up with, a decent role-playing game. But I think without that visibility, I don't think it ever would have grown to what it is now. I'm thankful to all the artists and all the actors and everybody who does the YouTube games from now and everybody in the past that has worked on them. Even the people who are naysaying against D&D and saying, that's the devil's game, don't play that. Even that level of bad notoriety, right? Bad press is still good press.
I don't think that it could change if it wanted to at this stage of the game. People have an expectancy from it. This is the style.
Yeah, you want to talk about a revolt. Yeah,
right.
Well, that's what happened in 4th edition, right?
Right.
If you changed 5th edition and you really revamped the rules and did something crazy, look at sales. Wizards of the Coast didn't drop another version of the game, 5 or so years into it just because they wanted to or because they had it in their back pocket. They were like, look, we got to sell this or Hasbro's going to sell us off, and Wizards of the Coast is going to be another one of those third-party alley games that you buy down crack alley over there, because it was going to the wayside. People were not wanting to play 4th edition, and that's where the rise of Pathfinder came up, and that's why Pathfinder got so big, because there was so much enmity, vitriol, venom at the 4th edition. All the gamers that were in it for a while, they felt betrayed. They're like, this isn't my D&D. It's still D&D. It kind of plays like it, but it's not my D&D. And that's what everybody wants to share with their kids, with their grandkids. It's kind of hard to fight that. No,
exactly right. And I think that sort of is where, from the perspective that I look at it now, I think that's where D&D, although it is, the greatest the most played, well-known system, I think that is its detriment to the gamers that play the game is people are pigeonholing Dungeons and Dragons to not change. You know what I mean? And I'm not going to say
nostalgic.
Right.
And it's nostalgic.
So
it's like vanilla ice cream. If you take the vanilla out of it, well, then what does it become? And then nobody wants to buy it because it's not vanilla ice cream. I was having this argument with somebody the other day. We were talking about what happens when the ice cream truck comes by. Well, when you were kids, you can get the Spider-Man shaped ice cream head, or you can get the blow pop or the bullet, or whatever, all these classic ice creams. Now you go to the ice cream truck when it comes around, it doesn't have the same stuff and it doesn't taste the same. And it's not the same shape and they're smaller. And like, I want the nostalgia back, and the people don't want to make that change in D&D because they don't want to lose that.
Your analogy is hilarious because now, as I've progressed through life, I've become lactose intolerant. So basically, if I was to go eat ice cream, it would give me the shits. and I can somewhat apply that to what I'm talking about with the D&D stuff because...
Yeah, so if you go play another D&D game or another version of D&D, it's going to give you the shits because you're not going to like it. It's not going to be the same.
So let me put it to you this way then. If you had to choose between playing, because we've played games outside of the bounds, would you choose a system like D&D where you're forced into a class run kind of a thing, or would you prefer the freedom like Savage Worlds where you have the idea but you can strap on the skills and abilities that you want, like in Savage Worlds or ICRPG? Which way are you going? Classes or no classes?
I'm going no classes.
Right.
I'm going no classes. I like the variation, the variability, plug and play, the modularity of it, and the freedom as a player to make whatever decisions I want, to tack on whatever kind of crazy weapons and abilities I want to play the character that I want to play. Mm-hmm. If you're going to play a high fantasy game that gives you standard tropes, very Tolkien-ish, and that's the kind of game you want to play, I'll jump into D&D. No problem. If that's the mood I'm in. Anything else? Classless. Mm-hmm. Even other fantasy games, classless.
Yeah.
I'd rather go that route.
I'm 100% on the same classless train, which is why your ice cream analogy is so hilarious, because I would rather do you know what I mean? I would rather play classless than play class. But then here this is the reason that this came up. It's super interesting because like if you've got all these people that are multiclassing, they're essentially doing the same thing that we're doing in Dungeons and Dragons outside of it. But at the same time, I feel like D&D or the people that play it and love it won't let it change, although people seem to want it to change. We're in this weird thing with the whole class thing going on here. Interesting freaking topic, man. Classes and how sort of D&D takes a handle of it and other ones take handles of it. If you're interested in the little infographic that we were talking about here, I will put this link in the show notes. And that's that. So yeah, out to the outro, contact info. Let's do this. So, that's it for this edition of the Murder Hobo Show. We hope you enjoyed it and the new changes to the show. If you didn't, guess what? We don't care. If you did, you can reach us at themurderhoboshow@gmail.com. Drop us a line. Tell us what you think about the class situation. Are you class or no class? If you didn't like it, we have a special email where we prioritize your mail so that it goes right to the top. And you can send that one to writeinthebin@hotmail.com. You can also get us on Twitter at The Murder Hobo Show, or Victor is at Ezra Harden. You can reach out directly to him, send him some possible nudies of your character drawn, not real life nudies, right?
More boobs.
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, links to the show and everything that we talked about can be found in the show notes at murderhoboshow.podbean.com. If you haven't reached out to us on MeWe, sign up for my bullet journals for GMs, Savage Riffs, I don't know, and the 16 other podcasts and places that I have my blog out there. You can also find me on WordPress at ezraharden.wordpress.com. I'm going to be posting a lot of my stuff and other interesting articles as we go throughout the next few months or so, try to keep up with that and revive my old blog. You can find all the Great Nerds International shows on MeWe as well, so take a look at those. There's lots of classics.
The 3T podcast is one of them. The Tabletop Twats podcast. They just put out an episode today. I don't know if you've been listening to them or not, but they're doing a cyberpunk-esque sort of futuristic troubleshoot. They work for this guy. Oh man, it's so good. And Harrison does such a
I read something about
job.
that.
Yeah, somehow Gary Busey always ends up making it into his podcast. Yeah, they end up killing Gary Busey for some reason. It's pretty funny. So, all right.
Oh my goodness.
Thanks for listening, and be sure to tune in next time. We're going to have another action-packed show where we talk about things that we know little to nothing about and sound professional doing it. Have a great weekend, or a great gaming week, I should say, and we're out of here. Say goodbye, Victor.
Game on, people.
Nice. The Murder Hobo Show is not affiliated with or endorsed by any companies mentioned on this show. Any of the products mentioned on our show or appear on our website are on property and copyright of their respected owners. All items are used under fair use and educational and review purposes. All other items are the intellectual property of the Murder Hobo Show, copyright 2019. All rights reserved. I asked him, would you be upset if I was a male prostitute? And he's like, I don't want to know about it. I'm like, okay, I'm going to work. See you, bud.